hey baby, send me a bikini shot is not love.
Well, then what is? Sleeping with a guy the second time you guys go out and then wondering why he never talks to you again?
What you over here being messy for?
What is going on, all you beautiful people out there? It is Cloudy from Finally Watched It here with a new video for 2000's KIDCORE. Now, for those that don't know how this series works, it essentially functions as a nostalgia trip for me. I go back and look at movies that I maybe saw in the mid-2000s to early 2010s, or movies that were popular during that time period that I never actually got a chance to watch, and they're typically focused around like the kid to young adult type of demographic. So today we're going to be talking about Cyberbully. Now, this was at the very tippity top of the list when I was putting down a list of like movies from the mid 2000s to like the early 2010s that I wanted to talk about for the whole 2000s KIDCORE series. Now, Cyberbully, this was a movie that, in my opinion, I think was like one of the first to really tackle like cyberbullying like this, outside of like Degrassi. I hate to bring up Degrassi as like technically the first, because they were technically the first on anything. They were just always ahead of the curve with that type of stuff. Now, Cyberbully, on the other hand, this was one that actually, I think this is probably the first time I remember watching a movie or show in school that actually was like, you know, gut-wrenching outside of like Bridge to Terabithia. But at least Bridge to Terabithia, that was more so like a traditional theatrical movie that was unrealistic in some parts. This Cyberbully movie is like very like, it is home, it is grounded, it is like very like this could happen to anybody type of situation. Now, I think a big reason why this movie to me has kind of like, you know, been iconic for quite some time, at least in my opinion, is because it features, number one, two main attractions from like, you know, late 2000s, early 2010s stuff, Emily Osment and Kay Panabaker. I think a lot of people actually confuse Kay Panabaker with her sister Danielle. Danielle's her older sister. Kay is like the younger one. Kay is from like Nancy Drew, that movie in the early 2010s. She's from Life is Rough, I believe was Kay Panabaker. Danielle Panabaker, she's the more notable one as of lately, because, you know, she's in like the Flash TV show and stuff like that. Kay, I don't think has really been in acting in like that long, and at least if she has, I think she only does like TV movies, TV series, and stuff like that. In fact, looking at her IMDb right now, she actually hasn't been in anything since 2012. So it looks like she has kind of like respectfully bowed out of it. And even then, she was only in, like I said, like TV series, TV movies, like never in anything theatrical. Danielle, on the other hand, is kind of like, you know, done a bit more. I think Danielle also hasn't really been in anything really theatrical, but that's besides the point. I'm more so saying these two main attractions, Emily Osment, Kay Panabaker, they were very well known amongst people in my age demographic. So this movie that's kind of part of the reason why it sticks out. Because when you think of Emily Osment, obviously you attach her to something like Hannah Montana. This was kind of like her first time kind of stepping out of that and being in like a main character role. And she did very well, all things considered. And I do want to say that a lot of the acting in this movie, it's kind of aged pretty well, especially like, because this is a very heavy, like emotional movie that has to maintain like a TV 14 rating. And they do a surprisingly good job at like, you know, just kind of conveying the emotion that somebody like Taylor would feel and somebody like Samantha would feel, and also making it very realistic. Because that also is another thing that I want to point out with this movie, is I love the fact that nobody in this movie is a perfect person. Everybody is like a flawed character. Taylor, her two friends, her mom, her little brother, her crush, the girls that are bullying her, obviously, but like there's not really anybody you can look at and be like, oh, they were perfect. And I think that's very important with a movie like this, because it shows just how like human, it kind of makes it feel more human. Like if we had one character that was just flawless, no issues whatsoever, just the goodest of people, it just wouldn't kind of like cut through in a movie like this, where it's like Taylor, she's a bit, I don't want to say shiesty, she's a bit harsh, she's not the greatest friend. Samantha clearly isn't the greatest friend. Cheyenne, she's a little two-faced. Her mom, she's a bit, you know, shows lack of caring. Scott, he's just like a teenage dude, so he has, of course, those issues. Her little brother is a slimy little guy. Like, none of these people are like perfect people. They all feel honest. Like all three of these, all three of the girls, the mom, the crush, the little brother, just that main group, all of them, you probably have seen somebody or heard or had a friend or had a brother or had a sister or nephew or something like that. You can easily look at these people and be like, I've seen that before. I know that person. And I think that's part of what makes this movie so great, is because a lot of them are very identifiable, which makes them feel a little bit more like attachable to certain people and stuff like that. Kind of helps you relate to it a bit more, which helps with a movie like this. Now, to go over what Cyberbully is about, because I talked too long without even breaking down the movie. Essentially, for those that don't know, because we have to assume some people out here haven't seen this, in Cyberbully, Taylor, who's played by Emily Osment, she is like a normal teenage girl, has a crush on this dude. Her friend Samantha is telling her not to mess with dude because he's just not a good guy, because Samantha hooked up with his friend. And I guess he was around his friend when they were talking about it, and he was cracking jokes. So she just looked at him as like, oh, he's a slimy guy. Like, I hooked up with his friend and he's laughing at his friend, like cracking jokes about the whole situation or something like that. Like, basically it was like guilty by association, sort of, kind of. So she wasn't feeling dude, and she didn't want Taylor to talk to him. Taylor, obviously head over heels, teenage girl, she still wanted to talk to him. And unfortunately, and this is one of Taylor's biggest flaws, she had a way of kind of just like clapping back, but clapping back where it's like, all right, it's like our argument was at like a 3 and you immediately jumped it to like an 8 or 9. Like, you just completely stepped over like the friendship boundary when it comes to arguing, because at one point they were arguing in the car. It's like, I don't know why you like this dude so much. And then Taylor jumped out the window, not literally, but she basically said like something along the lines of like, well, I'm not you. I don't just hook up a random dude, so like he's not gonna treat me the same way they seem to be treating you. Like, what are the, like, something that's like, you call yourselves friends? Y'all talk to each other. And I understand like teenage girls can be very snappy with each other. Like, I went to high school, I went to middle school, I've seen it. I don't have a sister, but like I've been around a lot of girls in high school, so I've seen the cattiness that they can have towards each other. And even then, that was something like, if I heard somebody say something like that to their friend, I would be looking at it like, whoa, like, are y'all really friends for real? Like, I think y'all got some underlying beef or whatever. So basically after that, Samantha posed as this fake guy, and she did that beforehand, and we'll get to that later, but she did it beforehand. But when she posed as this fake guy on the internet, she started talking as him to Taylor, and Taylor thought, oh, this is just some cool mysterious guy that somehow likes everything I like. Nothing suspicious about that. And basically Samantha, as posing as this guy, made up lies that he slept with Taylor and that she had like a STD and stuff like that, and basically completely destroyed Taylor's social life on the internet and in real life. And this spiraled Taylor into a deep depression. She no longer wanted to go to school, and the climax of it was her basically trying to, attempt self-transition. The only thing is she couldn't open up the pill bottle, which I don't care if you love this movie, hate this movie, like you don't like dark humor or whatever. That was fucking funny. I don't care what y'all say. That scene when they bust through the door and she's trying to get the cap off and she's like, I can't get it off. That was hilarious. I'm sorry. I get it. It's emotional. It's not funny. I get that. I laughed at it. It was funny to me. I still think it's a very serious situation. Like, I understand it's not like funny as far as like if it were to happen. Like, if I walked in on my friend doing that, I wouldn't necessarily be laughing at it. But in the vacuum of the movie at the time, like, and I think it was just the way she said it. I don't even think it was what she did. It was just how she did it. That was kind of funny to me. And I'm not even really trying to justify it, because I said it's funny. I thought it was funny. But I'm just saying, I understand it's a very real thing. I thought that was just funny. Now, obviously, after this, Samantha ends up coming clean and saying like, hey, I was the dude, and basically say like, yeah, the reason why you wanted to, remove yourself from the population is because of me. And this led to a falling out between them two, obviously. And over time, I guess with Taylor going to counseling and Samantha kind of dealing with bullying on her own end, because people found out that she was pretending to be this dude. So people kind of turned on her and was like, oh, let's start attacking her now, because like, what type of friend are you? And that was like shocking to me. I was like, whoa, like and bullying is not cool whatsoever. But that was like, wait, what? They actually are bullying, I guess in their mind, and I guess for that time, technically the right person in that scenario. I was like, wow, that was shocking to me. And long story short, towards the end of the movie, they both agree to have like this sit down with like these government people. I don't know if they were cops or whatever. I think they were. And they run a news story on it. And eventually her mom is able to convince the senator, I think it was the senator, to kind of change the rules around cyberbullying and all that type of stuff. And they have a happy ending, sort of, kind of. Both Taylor and Samantha come to the agreement that like their friendship is never gonna really be the same as it was before, but at least they can maybe get back to a point where they can be cool with each other, which I thought was very honest. Like that was another part of the movie where it's like, okay, I like that. I like how it's like, oh, let's go back to being as cool as we were before. Like, no, they make it very clear. They even say straight up, like, we might not be as cool as we was before, but maybe we could still be kind of cool. Now, this movie does have certain plot holes, like a big one, the whole thing of her friend making that fake guy's page. She made it before they even had that big argument in the car. Now, they were arguing about Homeboy before that, so I guess people can frame that as, well, maybe she made that fake account as the dude to kind of show Taylor what a good guy could actually look like. But even still, it's just like, that just wouldn't make, you made a whole fake page just to prove that point. Like, I just felt like it just didn't make sense to me. I felt like that was a bit of a misstep. I think if the guy would have got introduced afterwards, of course it would have made it obvious that, you know, that was her, but still playing it early like that just still kind of was like, well, why? That doesn't make any sense. Also, the aftermath with like her brother and like her mom and her dad, I don't think they really touched on that enough. Like, they had a brief interaction, her and her mom, after, you know, the whole attempt, and they had like a big argument in the car where her mom was trying to get her to go into the counseling to try to get help. But I just feel like they didn't maybe talk about that more, just like, you know, that whole family dynamic that was going on. That was something that I would have, like, just looking back, was like, oh, they probably should have spent a little bit more time on that. But other than that, I mean, outside of that, I think this movie was like, it still is a pretty good movie. Is it relatable nowadays? Hell no. No, not really. Well, I guess it depends. It's more so like a time capsule movie. And also, Cheyenne, by the way, like, I know I was talking about how like all these characters are flawed. Like, I didn't even really break it down like that. Cheyenne, which is the third friend, that was crazy. That was, for those that don't know what Cheyenne ended up doing or don't remember, Cheyenne, because like obviously when Samantha was making the fake guy, you know, kind of accused Taylor of having an STD after hooking up and stuff like that, a lot of people in the school started calling Taylor a whore and started calling her a slut and stuff like that, and by association started calling all her friends like skanks and stuff like that. That was the term back then for whore, was a skank, or a bop is what you younger generation call them now, bops. Now, Cheyenne wasn't happy about that, and she ended up cutting both of them off. Well, cutting Taylor off, really. Samantha, she was still kind of cool with, but she ended up cutting Taylor off, like, off the rip, and even started victim blaming her when she showed up to her crib and was like, why did you cut me off? Like, are you not cool with me and all that? And she said like, well, why did you have to get in the back and forth with, like, you know, why did you have to sleep with that guy and all that type of stuff? Basically being like, just terrible. That was the one thing too that was like, yo, even if like I move on from this whole situation, if I was Taylor, I still don't know if I would be vibing with Cheyenne like that. Like, you really like jumped to believe everybody but your friend and cut me off because they were calling you a skank by association. Like, that's what our friendship, like, really? And I get it, teenage girls, catty, different era, I understand that, but even looking back, it's like, that was kind of crazy. And her little brother Eric, I mean, like, he was a little shitter. He was just a little shitter. He wasn't necessarily he was a bad kid, but it was, when you really look at it in his lens, he wasn't really like, he was asking her, can you make a page for me and stuff like that. He wasn't really on those pages like that, so he didn't know the weight of what he ended up doing. And even a guy like Scott too, that they tried to give him the white knight treatment. I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of dude, and I don't know, maybe that's more so a personal thing that I have to deal with and go to therapy for. Maybe not. I don't know why. I just didn't like dude. I don't know what it was about him. He wasn't necessarily a bad character. Like I said, he kind of acted like a typical teenage guy in that scenario and a lot of the things that played out. But all in all, man, I really am happy that I went back and watched this movie, because it really took me back to like watching it in school with my friends. And I will say, I am being much more generous to this movie than I was growing up. I don't know what it is about the movies like this, that when you're a kid and they force you to watch it in school, it just makes y'all just like laugh. And even then, like, I know people are gonna say, really, you laughed at the parts like that you maybe weren't supposed to laugh at. When I tell you that, like, I went to school with some bad kids, man. Like, yeah. But looking back at this movie, like watching it now as, you know, a 24-year-old, my main takeaways were like, oh, okay. Number one, this movie captures the time very well. This movie is acted actually very well. The houses in this movie, where are they living? Like, the house, I was like, that's where my mind was at. The interior design of some of these houses was like, yo, y'all got money. Y'all got money. Like, what is that? Maybe that's the old head in me starting to creep out, but that was one thing I also took away as well. But I guess anyway, if I had to give this movie a grade rating, I really don't even know how to rate a movie like this, because this is more so like a it's an after school special. I guess I'll give it like a C plus. Give it a C plus. I think it's above an average movie. I think the acting, the way it's aged, of course the subject matter hasn't aged the greatest. That just is naturally going to come with a movie like this that covers what it covers. But I do think that is an above average movie. If you want a movie that kind of puts you in the mind frame of what being a kid in like the 2010s was like, in like a very in a very innocent but also kind of deep emotional way, I guess this is probably the best look at it. So all in all, that is it. As far as next week, I don't know what we're doing next week. I think I'm gonna start. I think maybe I should tease what I'm gonna do next week as far as next week's 2000s KIDCORE. I'm leaning on, and y'all can maybe help me with this. Y'all can maybe help me decide on this. I don't know if I'm doing Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist, because that's also a thing too. I want to make this very clear. I'm not going to be talking about just like kids movies and just like, you know, kid shows and stuff like that. I'm going to be talking about stuff that, like, if you were born in the late 90s or in the early to mid 2000s, you might have saw this up until maybe you were about like 17, 16 years old, like really covered like teenage stuff as well. So I'm thinking either Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist. I might do Shark Boy and Lava Girl. Sorcerer's Apprentice also as well, maybe. Never Back Down, Sky High. I don't know. I have a lot more on the list, but that's kind of where my head is at right now. And of course, you guys can recommend other stuff too that may be or may not be on this list. This list does have about like 65 different movies and shows. So from like, I think I cover from like 2003-ish to like 2013 is like my cutoff. So if you guys have other recommendations that I maybe could or could not add that I don't already have, of course you guys don't see the list, so you wouldn't know, but just recommend something. I might add it and I might actually cover it next week. You never know. But until next time, I will see you when I see you. Remember, eat your veggies, and I'm out.